Story 1. I am a non-American living in the United States for the past year. I like your country. I like the people. Every American I have met so far has been very friendly and welcoming. When people ask me if I would consider staying long-term, the visa is for 4 years. I say, not sure, but I would seriously consider it if I receive a good job offer. The past few months have made me realize that I do not think I will stay in this country. I have started going out with my passport and a letter from my employer just in case. My research funding has not been canceled yet, but with the National Health Service turmoil, we are in uncharted territory. I have to leave for a conference in Europe this summer, and I am seriously wondering how risky it is to leave. Will I be allowed to come back? I genuinely do not understand why people voted for Trump again. All Americans I know are dumbfounded by what is happening. Feels like the early days of a dystopia. Story 2. As a Canadian, like the neighbor kids we know have abusive parents, there's nothing we can do to stop it. Stay strong, everyone. We're mad for you, not at you. You still have friends in us. You're always in our thoughts, and we are hurting deeply for and with you. Keep your spirits up. Story 3. As a Canadian, I now view the United States as a toxic family that needs to get its act together, and I am mourning our long-lasting friendship that has just been shattered. I have always likened the United States to a friendly cousin who has many interesting things happening, albeit a bit selfish with a me-first mentality, unchecked gun issues even after children are repeatedly being harmed in schools, and a lack of health care. I can't believe in the information age how willfully ignorant some of these states are. Story 4. Irish. We are not fans of the Orange Man, but your tourists tip well. They also provide great entertainment. I cannot lie. From your Hollywood movies to your entire political system, it is like an unrealistically edited reality show. Story 5. No country is doing particularly well post-COVID, and with the war in Ukraine, I fear that Trump is causing significant issues right now. He may believe he can act as he pleases as the most powerful man on the planet, but unfortunately, there are and will be consequences for his actions from the rest of the world. He is alienating the United States from the global community, which is unfortunate. This is what happens when someone with a power-hungry mindset assumes control. I don't think the rest of the world expected this to happen a second time, but it has. I particularly would not want to be a United States citizen right now. It is very sad. Story 6. As a Chilean, I admire American culture, particularly in art, music, and movies. It is truly impressive. However, the consumerist image often associated with Americans can be off-putting, and the tendency to impose American culture everywhere can be irritating. For example, here in Chile, we have supermarkets owned by Walmart, and it is unpleasant to be encouraged to celebrate the 4th of July. That said, during my travels, I have met many Americans who have been fun, friendly, and kind. As a Chilean, I also want to apologize for those who travel to the United States solely to commit crimes. It is truly unfortunate. Best regards. Story 7. I have always been glad to be Canadian and felt thankful for our healthcare system, especially with some health issues I have had to deal with. However, I have always been fascinated by American media. I love American movies, I have vacationed in the United States, and I have online friends who are American. I have previously admired the United States for being a defender of major democratic countries and human rights. Unfortunately, many things I loved about America seem to be rapidly undone, and I recognize that most people in the United States do not support what is happening. A much larger number of people in the United States seem to support the current regime than I would have thought. It is baffling to me that the former president and his supporters seem to represent almost the exact opposite of everything that made America such an interesting and cool country. They hate cooperating with other democratic countries. They disdain the American democratic process and are eroding it as much as possible. They oppose freedom of speech and would send innocent people to gulags. They express hostility toward immigrants. They even seem to be against the free market. It is bizarre to see a regime that uses the American flag and patriotic symbols so much while absolutely despising everything about their own country and culture. You can take issue with some aspects of American culture. In fact, I definitely had things I did not like about the United States even before this. But I never hated the country even half as much as the supporters of the Make America Great Again movement clearly do. At this point, while I do not want to be a hateful person myself, I cannot help but harbor disdain for the Make America Great Again movement and those still supporting it. I have seen its supporters threatening Canadians online, with some stating they want the United States to invade my country. This would put my family, friends, freedom, and everything I care about at risk, including my own life. I cannot not dislike that. Story 8. I am South African. Generally, we used to view the United States as a leader of the free world and a country to admire. Western culture influenced us greatly. However, over the last few years, there has been a divide. Some right-wing Christian conservatives still view the United States as the best country with the best leader. In contrast, most liberals believe the United States is no longer desirable and would never consider moving there, despite having many problems at home. Story 9. Luxembourg. Past seasons were good but not perfect. In 2016, this season received some poor ratings. However, after 2024, the entire plot of the season was discarded, making it feel like the final season. Don't get me wrong. I admire American science, nature, technology, and more. Story 10. As a Canadian, I used to view the United States as an ally, but now I consider it one of our largest geopolitical threats. The United States seems determined to accelerate its decline. Story 11. What it meant. Einstein at Princeton, Fred Astaire, Clark Gable, Humphrey Bogart and Ingrid Bergman, Grace Kelly, Bob Dylan, Woodstock, The Grateful Dead, Bruce Springsteen, F. Scott Fitzgerald, Ernest Hemingway, John Steinbeck, superheroes, hamburgers, Coca-Cola, blue jeans, computers, video games, the television show M******H. Buffy the Vampire Slayer, George R.R. Martin, Robert Jordan. Now, Make America Great Again, willful ignorance. The cruelty is the point. Fox News, Maggie Haberman and Peter Baker, presided over by a terrible leader. Story 12. I am an Icelander. You think you are free and often talk about freedom, but you are not truly free. Your systems are lacking, including healthcare, workers' rights, human rights, and education. You believe you are the envy of the world, but that is no longer the case. Many of us feel sorry for you because you seem delusional. However, you are powerful, maintain a strong military, and have influenced the world with your culture. You accomplished great things in the past, and we appreciate your support during World War II, as well as your assistance in building our country. We had a good relationship, but with the current situation, your threats against our friends in Denmark and Greenland, the violation of human rights, and the actions of your former president, we are saddened and disappointed. Some of us are afraid you may target us as well. It is interesting, in a way, to witness the decline of an empire. Story 13. Canadian here. It's not the tariffs, although they are not helping. It is the threats to our sovereignty. This is not how you treat your supposed best friend and greatest ally. So don't mind us while we look elsewhere for a new best friend and trading partner. Voting for Donald Trump the first time was foolish. A second term? Well, you've just shown the rest of the world what is in your heart. It is dark, racist, misogynistic, hateful, and not pretty. If Americans are able to right themselves and return to democracy, be prepared to accept the censure of the world for decades to come. America as an ally and trading partner cannot be trusted. Story 14. From Italy, I would say your general culture has a significant influence, including movies, music, and cars. However, your obsession with social issues and political discussions often leads to relentless criticism and is, in my view, a form of excessive mental indulgence. Personally, I have conflicting opinions. I love the United States. Ever since I was a child, I dreamed of moving there. At the same time, I believe your success has made some people appear spoiled and thoughtless. This is evident in how comments following mine often distort what I have said to fit their own political narratives against individuals they dislike, likely including prominent figures like Donald Trump and Elon Musk. Story 15. My country has always been very loyal to the United States. It took 3 months to destroy that relationship. We have been threatened with military aggression from Trump. With friends like that, I'm from Denmark. Story 16. I am from Venezuela. My country is under a military dictatorship that is currently very pleased because their political propaganda has always been that the United States is at fault for everything. Personally, I despise the dictatorship in my country and strongly believe that right now the United States is heading towards that exact same type of dictatorship. It does not matter if one is left and the other is right. They use the same tactics and follow the same patterns. Both sides are essentially puppets of foreign powers. While civilians are arguing with each other about being left or right, the far-right and far-left politicians both work for the same oppressive agenda. Story 17. As an American reading all of your comments, I am deeply embarrassed. I voted for Kamala Harris. I remember Trump being a huge joke the first time around and how he completely botched the COVID response. I remember every speech being a confusing mix of words and being shocked that so many people could sit and listen to him, thinking to themselves, wow, he's a great leader and so smart. It's just completely insane. As an American, I feel like I'm living in a Twilight Zone episode. Like any narcissist, Trump knew how to prey on people's insecurities. For those who are insecure and full of fear about the future, it feels incredibly good to think that none of this was their fault. This is because of those people, not me. They are causing the decline of my country. And Donald Trump is the only one willing to admit that and do something about it. It is an intoxicating delusion for anyone who has been consuming propaganda for the last 40 years and spent the first half of their life inhaling the fumes from leaded gasoline. Story 18. I see a country that had a choice between voting for democracy or autocracy and chose the autocrat. I see a country that had the option to move forward or backward and opted for Project 2025, returning to a time when Christian extremism and a lack of human rights prevailed. Story 19. Let me say this as a Canadian. Before all this mess, we viewed the United States as our best friend and ally. Personally, whenever I went to the store, I didn't even differentiate between made in the United States and made in Canada. Why? Because it didn't matter since we were basically on the same team. That is all shattered now, and quite honestly, we are angry and scared. The tariffs are one thing and will be economically difficult. The other issue surrounding annexation and how much the far right celebrated it was a massive wake-up call for us. We will never view the United States the same way again. For me, I feel incredibly sad because I feel we lost a close friend to the political equivalent of crystal meth. We will grieve for a long time. Story 20. I am a German who lived in the United States for an extended period. I view Americans as universally extremist and complacent. Both conservatives and progressives are always trying to break new ground, pushing the envelope to aggravate each other. They see others as the enemy. I don't want to equivocate too much, as fascists and kleptocrats are obviously far more destructive than neoliberal social progressives, but they share this particular feature. They are complacent in that none of them truly believes that such things can happen at home. They can't quite picture it. They don't grasp what it means to label a neighbor as an enemy. They don't fully understand the gravity of destabilizing their country on one end or the true cost of waiting and seeing on the other. They don't have mountains of decaying rubble outside their cities or videos in their history classes of enemies marching through eerily familiar streets. Story 21. I am Canadian and feel sad about the potential that has been squandered, the goodwill that has been destroyed, and the inevitable conflict that will follow as a result of how the world will need to respond. Story 22. I am a Dutch person, and I believe many here think that your democracy is declining, that the country has become an oligarchy, and is on the verge of becoming a dictatorship. Additionally, among my friends, nobody would be surprised if your country descended into civil war, as extremists are likely to be pardoned anyway, and many people in the United States own some of the most outrageous weapons legally. Story 23. I'm Canadian and I live close to the border. I've always thought they could be difficult to deal with, and we Canadians can be challenging too, so I'm not sure. It's true. Story 24. In the early years, it was a land of dreams and opportunities. Now it feels like an over-the-top episode of a television show that is no longer funny. Story 25. Our closest ally has betrayed us unexpectedly. How would you view a friend who betrayed you and refuses to acknowledge their actions? Story 26. I'm frustrated with how much your country has declined, as it negatively impacts other countries as well. The former president and his associates are clearly attempting to establish an authoritarian regime and are supporting extremist groups in other nations simultaneously. Additionally, the influence the United States wields over the world is overwhelming. No single country should hold this level of control over other sovereign states. For context, I am from Ireland. Story 27. They are like that annoying neighbor who thinks you are friends, tries to start a homeowners association, keeps inviting you to their Bible group, and just won't stop talking. Story 28. Brit here. I got happily married in Manhattan 25 years ago and have worked for over 25 years for a great US blue-chip company, for which I am very thankful. The last couple of months have seen a great war leader humiliated unnecessarily, people deported illegally, and senior cabinet ministers treating sensitive information with contempt. They have failed to fix two wars as promised, and now we are facing a tariff fiasco that is all about trade imbalances and not exchange for favors. The UK isn't even imbalanced. How do you think we view it? It's absolutely tragic. Story 29. I am a Canadian, specifically French Canadian from Quebec. I have nothing against most American citizens, but I view the government as incompetent. My family is avoiding purchasing anything from the United States. We have canceled subscriptions and are trying to buy mostly from Canada or anywhere else in the world except the United States. My country is working to form a movement to not consume anything from the United States, and it shows. In my grocery store, there is a greater emphasis on Canadian products, and some American brands are disappearing from the shelves or not being purchased. We will not accept threats of annexation. We do not want it at all. Story 30. Blinkered mostly. The Anglophone internet can sometimes be insufferable, with posters assuming that everyone speaking English understands every American food, term, slang, pop culture reference, state abbreviation, political nuance, etc. Here, especially, anyone who asks questions often gets downvoted. I saw someone posting a product review request that mentioned prices in euros and received a response suggesting to go to Costco, which was interesting. There seems to be a widely held belief that one's country is the best in the world, which contrasts with how most citizens of other nations view their own countries. And the religious zealotry is something else. Story 31. As an Eastern European, I view the United States similarly to my own country. About half of the population is rural and uneducated, highly religious, and influenced by conspiracy theories, often voting for the most ridiculous candidates and policies. The other half is urban, more educated, and more productive members of society, but they tend to be pretentious when it comes to voting. They often split the vote or are completely disillusioned with politics because candidates do not align fully with their interests, causing sensible candidates and policies to fail in front of the former group. Story 32. It is like watching a reality show with the most incompetent people on television, but you cannot switch it off even if you want to, and we really want to. Story 33. I am Canadian. You are our brothers and sisters from another mother, except for those who support Make America Great Again. They can go away. Every single one of them. Story 34. I am an American and previously I liked America, but I wasn't a hardcore patriotic person. I always felt that praising ourselves for being so great was a huge turnoff. Ever since high school, it was apparent that we whitewashed our history to make it seem like we always did the just and righteous thing while completely ignoring the atrocities we committed or painting them as actually being good. Meanwhile, we are told we are the freest country in the world, with the best of everything, despite the fact that even a cursory glance at other countries shows that we are woefully incorrect about that in many ways. People are convinced that having miserable access to healthcare, which is predatory and expensive, is somehow a good thing. People are convinced that having a police force with near absolute immunity to repercussions is somehow necessary. People think that having guns everywhere is necessary to protect us from the guns that are everywhere. People think that your level of consumption is a good way to gauge success. People think that blind patriotism is an honest way to live. People think that education is somehow damaging our children and population. So much of our culture has produced mentally ill, morally bankrupt, selfish, self-absorbed, isolated, shallow, opportunistic, greedy, angry individuals. It's not everyone, maybe not even most people, but it's so many people. I live in a relatively conservative area with conservative parents, and it's painful to watch. Because of all of this, I don't blame other countries for being disgusted by us. I dislike the former president and the political party he represents, and because their actions are so harmful, I honestly hope they suffer the consequences of their misguided ideas. I want other countries to reject us as long as he is in charge. I want them to retaliate against the tariffs and threats, even though it will make my life harder. I'm cheering for the leaders who are opposing this regime. America itself might be okay and have potential, but this administration and its constituents are harmful and have grown like a cancer. We did it to ourselves. We made this possible. We ignored the warnings and doubled down on superficial lies. It's just so sad. Story 35. Horrified. Why didn't any of the Democratic presidents undo what Reagan did to stop Fox News from stupefying Americans? Story 36. We used to view you almost as our brothers. Now we want nothing to do with you. We hope the relationship will improve at some point in the future, after you choose a different leader, but it will never be the same. Story 37. Living next to you is in some ways like sleeping with an elephant. No matter how friendly and even-tempered the beast is, one is affected by every twitch and grunt, said the late Pierre Trudeau. The biggest threat to Canada has always been fascism coming from America. Even during the height of the Cold War, it was clear the only country that would ever invade us is the United States. The Trump presidencies have proven every fear, doubt, and misgiving Canadians have about the United States to be valid and true. Story 38. In the 1980s, when I was born, the United States, which I assume you mean by America, was considered the greatest of all time. Since the 1990s, it has gradually declined, and since you threatened Denmark, we Nordic countries have been discussing how to avoid and boycott everything made in the United States. Story 39. As a Canadian, I can say that many of us view America unfavorably and are avoiding the States whenever possible. Story 40. I'm Canadian. I'm rather miffed. I'm slightly annoyed. In fact, I may become irritated soon. Anyone speak Canadian? Story 41. Canada is full of amazing people, as well as individuals who blindly follow the narratives presented by certain media outlets. Story 42. I'm not really allowed to use inappropriate language on Reddit, or I will be blocked. Story 43. I have met great American people and admired many American achievements and politicians. I have Americans in my family, and I am Canadian. We saw trouble in the year 2000. That election was a shambles, the outcome in doubt, and its arbitration sketchy. We watched after September 11th that global support for the United States for a moment was universal. The Russian president called with condolences, and people were lighting candles for Americans in places like Iran. Canada landed your planes. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization invoked Article 5. We went to war at your side. This support was squandered terribly. First, there were the torture camps, then another war, then more torture camps, and a backlash against allies that didn't go to Iraq with you, including intellectuals. Even under President Obama, the drone programs continued, Guantanamo Bay stayed open, the National Security Agency spied on everyone, and then there was President Trump. There is an often overlooked element in our own politics. The Quebec sovereignty movement all but dried up after September 11th, and there was no longer the same support for leaving Canada. I believe the Québécois realized what the rest of us began to wake up to. After decades of assuming that Anglo-Canadians and Americans were essentially the same, it became clear that Americans were different. The populace believed lies, quickly resorted to aggression, belittled their political rivals, ignored their hallowed constitution whenever prompted, and didn't elect parties that reflected their self-interest. Then there was Trump. Now America has descended to a menace status that threatens war over the territory of allies and questions the right of nations to exist. There is a racial component, too. Now there are actions reminiscent of a police state, camps, and the erosion of the rule of law. If America doesn't eradicate Trumpism in the 2026 midterms, the world will understand that these changes are here to stay, and another Cold War will begin, if the hot one hasn't already started. You are cousins. Americans helped build our land and created some of the best Canadians. The leader of our Green Party is American, and we share many cultural touchstones. To answer your question, not good at all, but I also believe that if Americans want it badly enough, they can topple this, strengthen their democracy, and be better. Story 44. The United Kingdom generally holds a broadly positive opinion of the United States due to shared culture, history, and values, but is also highly critical of many aspects of the United States. At the moment, the United States is viewed very poorly. The special relationship is practically dead, and the United States is now more likely to be grouped with the likes of Russia and China than Europe or Canada and New Zealand by most British citizens. The current United States administration highlights the worst aspects of the nation: arrogance, exceptionalism, violence, anti-intellectualism, selfishness, unregulated capitalism, bigotry, religious fundamentalism, and more. The fact that British citizens hold the United States in such high esteem makes the current situation so infuriating. For me personally, it's complicated. I believe the United States has some of the most beautiful landscapes in the world. The nation's journey, history, and identity have always connected with me. The general American culture has many great elements, such as innovation and positivity, yet also leaves much to be desired. The outward image of the country, at least in the past, is beautiful, but the harsh reality, particularly in the current climate, is borderline dystopian. On the whole, I find American institutions and businesses to be deeply deplorable. The American people tend to be bubbly and fun, but the culture has significant issues surrounding exceptionalism and anti-intellectualism. I like the idea of the United States, I appreciate its image, and I wish well for the future of its people. However, the country in its current state does not leave much to envy. There are certainly far worse countries and no perfect countries, but the United States, on the whole, is distinctly behind the rest of the developed world. I hope that in the not-too-distant future, we can once again consider Americans as reliable allies, partners we can be proud of and would be willing to defend if the time comes. Allies whom we can view as brothers and sisters of the free world and would hope they would feel the same for us. But for the time being, it is in the best interest of the United Kingdom and the world to move away from the United States. Story 45. Spain. Personal opinions aside, the general consensus is that they continually undermine themselves and are attempting to present it as a master plan. Story 46. As a non-American who has never been to the United States, I will say this. I can't really make any comments, nor should anyone in such a position, until I have tried your cheeseburger. Story 47. The United Kingdom here. America is very emotionally driven compared to other countries. Individual Americans can be perfectly rational, of course, but the society overwhelmingly features drama, confrontations, conflicts, and emotions at the forefront as major motivators for decision-making and as influencers in arguments, affecting how people behave, including voting and purchasing. News interviews, even about very intellectual subjects, often devolve into two people shouting at each other on the screen, with all nuance and conversational flow lost. Television shows focus on people getting upset and confronting each other, sometimes resulting in all parties ending up emotional, or one party crying while the other emerges as the clear, dominant winner. Advertisements and statements by politicians often appeal to emotions rather than to logical consistency, rationality, or proportionality. There is nothing quite like debating Americans for even well-known logical fallacies to be presented as if they are strong, convincing arguments. There are many issues in America right now, and solutions will not be easy. One way to begin would be to acknowledge that America needs change, but how do you achieve that when so many Americans believe America is already the greatest country in the history of the world? Story 48. As a complete disaster. Most people here in Sweden cannot understand that you elected the orange character again. Story 49. I view America as being ruled by a dictator who is negatively impacting the world. I have already lost some of my retirement savings due to stock market crashes, and everything is becoming more expensive for everyone. This is largely due to the influence of certain voter groups. Story 50. The country responsible for many unjustified wars and attacks on smaller nations is often criticized. Story 51. I live in the United States. Our image has to be better in comparison to other countries. I hope that others don't assume that individually we are all unkind or overly consumer-driven individuals who disregard everyone else. That is definitely not the case. Story 52. As a Canadian, I used to dislike the way the United States projected itself to the world, but I acknowledged that it had strengths. Now, it just seems like a hollow, failed empire. How could a civilized, evolved country actually elect a person like that? He is a repugnant human being in every sense of the word, and somehow a majority of United States voters endorsed him, knowing full well what they were voting for. It is unfathomable. Considering the recent threats to Canada, both economic and political, my indifference has turned to hostility. I feel bad for the less than 50% of American voters who did not put him in office, but my feelings towards the country as a whole probably are not productive to express in writing. Story 53. Born in communist Romania, I spent my teenage and young adult years in a fragile Eastern European democracy. I have been a grateful Canadian citizen for the last 15 years. I am living in shock and disgust, both as an Eastern European who knows firsthand the horrors caused by Russia and as a Canadian by adoption. I am forever grateful and devoted to this amazing and kind country where I am fulfilling all the missed opportunities from my past. I cannot comprehend what the world is coming to and how the Americans can choose to tie the noose around their necks and burn all the bridges between the United States and the same world. Story 54. As a Canadian, it feels like the downstairs neighbors have gone on vacation and their son, who struggles with substance use, has been left in charge. Story 55. My friend and I have always been pro-American for various personal reasons. He grew up there as a child, and I spent a few years there in early adulthood. We were aware of both the good and the less favorable aspects of the country, but remained supportive of it. The moment we realized that they not only allowed Donald Trump to run for president but also elected him, we mutually agreed that they are quite misguided. It wasn't just the two of us, but we used similar words since we are friends. By allowing this situation to occur through their votes, they seem to deserve the outcome, and it's difficult to feel pity for them. They never considered the worldwide consequences of their actions. It is hard to defend someone who showed indifference towards important issues. The shift in sentiment even among pro-Americans like us is significant. I feel sorry for what our country has become, but at least we still possess some common sense and pride. It takes a lack of both to permit your country to be governed by a felon who openly stated he would betray allies and harm both global and local economies. This occurred due to their votes or indifference towards voting altogether. Still, reading sad messages from the minority who are still reasonable there personally saddens me. I cannot imagine being in their position and watching everything unfold. Story 56. I am Canadian. I feel like the United States has become intoxicated by its own power and is currently in the worst stage of its addiction. The lowest point is approaching quickly, and I hope that a majority of Americans decide to seek help. No one is coming to save you, United States, you have to save yourself. Story 57. I am from Denmark. The country America is threatening to invade and has been criticizing for the past few months. It is safe to say that the United States is not very popular here. People are increasingly boycotting American brands. Most people understand that many Americans did not support Trump either, but we are still upset with the majority who either voted for him or chose not to vote at all. Story 58. I am in Sweden. There is a massive consumer-driven boycott on American goods happening right now. The United States has a negative reputation here. It had a bad reputation before Donald Trump as well. People here do not understand your politics, why you love your firearms, why healthcare is so expensive, and why workers do not have any rights. While we think that, we also take a lot from your culture. There are also many misconceptions, such as the belief that you are bad at geography, when most of us would not be able to name 5 states or locate them on a map. We also wonder why you do not travel abroad, as it is very affordable and easy here, leading us to believe it is the same everywhere. Story 59. Like they used to be a really cool older cousin, but now that I'm older, I see that they are a strung-out meth addict. We've tried to help, but they seem to be beyond help, yet they still think they are cool. At this stage, I just hope they get taken away because their behavior is affecting everyone else. Story 60. We are very much like their younger brother. We constantly tease, bully, and threaten each other verbally with all the bravado that comes from being behind a screen or camera. We are used to apologizing to the rest of the world for our annoying neighbors and then sitting back and laughing while they have another tantrum over nothing. But do not be fooled. Like the now grown-up little sibling, we will hit back if struck first. And the rest of the neighborhood, which they believe are their friends, will be at our backs, ready for the excuse to get in the next shot. That being said, like so many times in the past, such as Gander during September 11th, search and rescue efforts in aid during Hurricane Katrina, and most recently, the water bombers for the fires in California, Canada doesn't think twice and puts everything aside when it matters most. No matter the social or political tides, we have been there and we will be in the future because that is what Canada is. We will show the fury of a patient person when tested, then offer a hand back up and make sure that you are okay afterwards before inviting you inside for an ice pack and a cold beer while we watch the game together. That is who we are. Story 61. Like a painful backache that keeps coming back every few minutes to remind me it's still there. It's really annoying and puts me in a bad mood. Story 62. I am Malaysian Chinese and have been exposed to Americans and their culture. My sister worked on Wall Street for a few years, and I lived in Boston and California for some time. From the beginning, I thought Americans were busybodies, for better or worse. They would start fights for the smallest reasons or stand up for the little guy. Today, I personally can't stand Americans. Californian drivers are reckless. The tipping culture is excessive. Flying with American Airlines is frustrating, and many people behave like they are the main character, lacking manners. They are loud, obnoxious, rude, and arrogant. I would be happy never to visit the United States again. Even their accent irritates me. Many of my fellow countrymen, including modern urban moderate Muslims, have developed strong dislike for the United States since the Israel-Palestine conflict escalated. Story 63. I believe the entire world is witnessing the decline of a once respectable country. The American dream seems to have vanished, replaced by a troubling situation. I empathize with all honest Americans who must contend with this shame. The tragedy is that Donald Trump's greed is harming the global economy, and he appears indifferent. Story 64. South Africa, you are now perceived in a negative light similar to how some view the entire continent of Africa. Story 65. In the United Kingdom, the general view is that Americans have low intelligence quotients, are unhealthy, and consume primarily processed food filled with genetically modified organisms and food additives. They are perceived as self-obsessed and see themselves and the United States as the center of the world. Story 66. I am Canadian, and I am not a fan. They can all go and kick rocks. If you vote for a clown, you get a circus. I have never wanted 4 years of my life to go by so quickly. Story 67. As an amazing country with diverse cultures and climates, it could be a special place to visit or live. However, it has been taken over by arrogant and radical groups. Before this recent disturbing change, it was heavily focused on capitalism, celebrating aggressive practices and exploiting workers. It also has striking extremes of poverty and wealth and is overly concerned about socialism, confusing it with communism. Story 68. I apologize, but I believe it is best for America to face challenges, so it can serve as a lesson for those favoring extreme right-wing policies. Currently, we in Europe see the United States as an objective enemy. Story 69. I love America. It has a beautiful landscape. When I visit, the people are friendly. However, I feel like I'm the only person in my country who admires American people. Story 70. I am from Europe. When I discuss religious matters, it seems that in America there is less religious freedom. The belief that the world was created 6,000 years ago is less common in Europe. We do not have a Bible Belt here. In reaction to this, there are also militant atheists in the United States. In Europe, both theists and atheists tend to hold less radical views, are more moderate, and are more likely to compromise and be open-minded. Story 71. I am American. I left the United States 16 years ago and moved to Japan. Honestly, Americans are typically wonderful people. We are nice, hospitable, caring, loving, and friendly. However, our government does not reflect these qualities. Please do not associate our government with the representation of Americans. The government and media consist of a small group of wealthy individuals taking advantage of all of us. The same applies to Russians. I cannot tell you how many Russian people I have met who are easygoing and express similar sentiments. Do not form your opinions about Americans or any group of people based on what you see on television or online. Form your opinions about Americans based on your actual experiences when interacting with us. Because we support you as a community, and you support us. Story 72. I would be ashamed to be American. You are seen poorly in the rest of the world. You are not only bullies but also unwise bullies. I feel sorry for you. We all feel ashamed for you. Story 73. It's like one of those dark lands in children's shows, all gloomy and ruled by an evil dark lord along with his henchmen, whose main goal is to wreak havoc on all the other lands while their people continue to suffer. The only exception is the food, which I think is not so healthy but still good. Story 74. The politics is chaotic, but I'm going back next year because the landscape in the West and Southwest is unbelievable and the average American is a nice person. Ireland. Story 75. American here. We are living in the worst possible revival of the 1980s. The music and movies are mostly tacky, cocaine is far more popular than it deserves to be, and political conservatism is rampant. It is a nightmare. Story 76. All countries have a percentage of the population that is uneducated and lacking critical thinking skills, with a focus on only short-term goals. However, most countries are not governed by this segment of the population. Story 77. I am a Canadian living 5 minutes from the border in British Columbia. Watching this chaos has made me pause. I used to go to the United States for gas and groceries, but not anymore. Last year, I had to go through the United States to reach Brazil, landing in Miami. On my next trip, I plan to skip landing in the United States and go through Mexico City instead. This experience feels like watching a train wreck while living right beside the tracks. Story 78. I remind myself daily, I don't hate all Americans. But if your country invades mine, it will be harder to keep saying it. I see America as a cautionary tale, like the Icarus of countries. It flew too high, too fast, and now is plummeting. Story 79. How do we feel about America? With a deep sense of betrayal and outrage. We have been steadfast allies and friends for over a century, but we are now insulted and betrayed by a misguided leader and his extremist associates. Story 80. Canadian with many American friends, relatives, and former industry colleagues, by declaring a political, diplomatic, and economic war on my nation. In less than 90 days, Donald Trump has completely and likely permanently destroyed a 150-year international friendship, economic partnership, and military alliance. So now we Canadians know that not only can we no longer trust the nation of America, and not only can we no longer trust American politicians, we can no longer even trust the American people who gleefully put him into power and who are, by and large, content to watch him wreak economic and political havoc on my nation, as unconcerned as if he were just a toddler flinging his toys around during a temper tantrum. I was planning to spend about $12,000 on an 8-week vacation this summer to New York City, Washington, D.C., and Chicago, to tour their famous museums and galleries and to watch some shows. No more. I'm going to Montreal and Atlantic Canada instead. Because for me to even buy so much as a tank of American gas would be equivalent to a Polish Jew spending lavishly to attend Hitler's 1936 Olympics, or an American taking a grand tour of Imperial Japan in 1943. As far as I am concerned, this is a permanent schism. Even when Trump is dead and rotting in his grave, I will never again knowingly fly on an American airline, stay in an American hotel, buy a bottle of Tennessee bourbon or California wine, or a bag of Texas rice, or even so much as a bag of Washington apples or Florida oranges. I'm done with both America and Americans, and I assure you, so are tens of millions of my fellow Canadians. Story 81. We love Peru. Argentinian steak is incredible. Brazil might be a bit too hot. Canadians were friendly but seem quite off lately. We love the Caribbean. Mexico. Oh, your sweet food. I believe the European Union is partly influenced by America too. How sweet is Panama for granting passage to everyone. Story 82. I am German and I have just been there. I think it's a country with a deeply divided population, and I doubt there is any way to prevent everything from falling apart beyond repair. Story 83. I hope they know that some of us didn't want any of this, and we tried our best to prevent it from happening. Now we're all scared and feeling hopeless. Story 84. I'm witnessing the United States slip into a full dictatorship, with the House and Senate not taking action to stop it, elections manipulated excessively, and a Supreme Court that is heavily influenced by dark money. It does help Europe to become disentangled from the United States finally and reduces the influence of the far right, which is a positive development. Story 85. I am from Canada, and to be honest, it feels like betrayal. I have made some amazing friends in America, and we will always be friends. However, I have already told them that I will not step foot in America for at least the next 3.5 years, and quite possibly never again. I know many other countries that would appreciate my tourist dollars, and of course we will be spending them in Canada. Story 86. Non-Americans of Reddit, please understand that most of our population is struggling. From the moment we are born, we become numbers. Our entire lives are controlled, and all our media consumption is designed to make us hate each other and rely on a government that views us as mere components in a system they have created. What is happening in America is not our fault. We have no say. Our votes do not count because large corporations' influence outweighs ours, and they have a vested interest in maintaining a system of invisible oppression. We do not live in a democracy. It is an oligarchy. Our leaders are silencing dissenters, prosecuting free speech, and deporting individuals with legal residency simply because their ancestors answered the call inscribed on the Statue of Liberty in Emma Lazarus' beautiful poem. Please do not hate us. Help us. We are in danger. Story 87. As a former resident, I feel a slight bit of sympathy before I laugh and shake my head at the entire situation. All they had to do was vote for Kamala. Now look at their foolishness. Story 88. From Latvia. I cannot speak for the entire country, but to me it appears to be a disaster. It is a disaster that will definitely influence us, but nowhere near as much as it affects the people involved. Story 89. Core values that are repugnant, a culture of greed, hate, and ignorance, deeply flawed and constructed on a foundation of lies and corruption. Story 90. I wanted to visit the United States for a second time after 20 years, but they have denied people entry based on social media posts about Donald Trump. They also bullied Volodymyr Zelensky, the Churchillian hero of our time, in the Oval Office. What a disaster. Then they sided with Russia. For goodness sake, it's time to sever ties, halt all trade, and develop our own nuclear capabilities. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.